Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive into some really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
It's all about this Israeli investigative journalist, Rביב Drucker.
Fascinating guy.
And we're going to look into like what kind of work he does and all that.
Right, yeah. His impact.
But also why things like strong encryption are so important for reporters like him.
Especially the kind of investigations he does. I mean, they often kind of shake up Israeli society pretty seriously.
And that's kind of what got me so interested in doing this deep dive. You know, getting into the nitty-gritty of how someone like Drucker actually operates.
Yeah.
What are the risks he's dealing with?
Yeah, high-stakes stuff.
So before we even get into all the encryption stuff, can you maybe set the stage for us a bit? Like, who is this guy? And what makes him so important in the world of investigative journalism?
Well, Rביv Drucker is definitely one of the most prominent, you could even say the most impactful investigative journalists working in Israel right now. His work, I mean, it consistently exposes all this corruption, you know, misconduct, abuse of power within institutions and among individuals. And we're not just talking small-time stuff. We're talking politicians, business tycoons, even military leaders.
Whoa.
Nobody's off limits for him.
And I bet that makes some people pretty angry.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, taking on powerful figures like that can't be easy.
Right. It's not for the faint of heart.
Not at all.
And in fact, you can see that in Drucker's career, which is just dotted with these high-profile cases that have sparked public outrage.
Yeah, I bet.
Triggered legal battles, even led to some serious real-world consequences.
Oh, wow.
One that really comes to mind, like a really notable investigation of his involved Ehud Olmert. You remember him?
Yeah, Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister of Israel at the time, Drucker uncovered a whole series of financial scandals, and it ultimately led to Olmert's resignation.
Really?
And eventually even a conviction. But it wasn't just about Olmert himself. The scandal just completely shook public trust in the government.
I can imagine.
There were all these calls for reforms. People wanted to address the systemic corruption they saw in the government.
That's amazing. Talk about impact.
It really shows you just how vital investigative journalism is, especially in a democratic society.
For sure.
You know, it's like a check on those in power. It ensures accountability.
Keeps things transparent.
Exactly. It keeps the public informed about what's really happening behind the scenes.
Because who knows what would stay hidden if it weren't for journalists like Drucker willing to dig deep and expose these things.
That's right. And that's where the whole encryption piece comes into play.
Right, because this request we got specifically mentioned the need for advanced encryption systems for reporters like Drucker.
Makes sense.
Which makes sense to me, considering the super sensitive nature of his work, going after these powerful people.
You know, journalists like Drucker, they face a lot of risks. And those risks just multiply when you're dealing with powerful people or institutions who really want to protect their own interests, right? And we're talking about potential surveillance.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Legal pressure.
Definitely.
Even threats to their personal safety.
It's scary to think about.
It really is.
Sometimes it's easy to forget that these journalists are really putting themselves on the line, not just their careers, but their lives.
Absolutely. And so encryption becomes a vital tool for them. It's like a digital shield. Yeah, they protect themselves and their sources.
Okay.
Imagine like a journalist working with a whistleblower from inside some corrupt corporation.
Okay, yeah.
Without those secure communication channels, their conversations could be intercepted so easily.
Right.
The whistleblower's identity could be exposed, and then they both could face serious consequences.
Wow. So encryption basically makes it impossible for anyone other than the recipient to read those messages. Right.
Exactly. It scrambles up the information in a way that's unreadable without the decryption key.
Smart.
And there are all sorts of different encryption tools specifically designed for journalists to use.
Like what?
Well, one you've probably heard of is Signal. It's a messaging app that's really popular because it uses end-to-end encryption.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. And then there's Secure Drop, which lets sources anonymously submit sensitive information to news organizations.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
So all these tools really help make sure that sensitive information stays confidential and protected.
It almost feels like a digital arms race, you know? Journalists having to stay one step ahead of the people who want to silence them.
That's a good way to put it. It's a constant back and forth. Technology advances, and so do the tools to protect information and the methods used to try and get around those protections.
Right, like a cat and mouse game almost.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, this isn't just about journalists, you know? This need for encryption, it goes way beyond just investigative reporting.
Yeah.
We're living in an age of increasing digital surveillance, data breaches, online threats everywhere.
It can be overwhelming.
It can be. And protecting our privacy, our data, it's more crucial now than ever.
For sure.
Think about all your online activity, your financial transactions, your personal conversations even.
It's a lot.
Encryption plays such a key role in safeguarding all of that.
It really makes you think.
It does.
So we've learned a lot today about the importance of investigative journalism.
For sure.
How it holds power accountable, the risks that journalists like Rביv Drucker face.
Yeah, real risks.
And how encryption isn't just some fancy tech term, but a crucial tool to protect their work, their sources, and ultimately, the truth.
All of that, yeah.
And it really begs the question, what are you doing to protect your own data?
Good